Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here, and I have for you guys a Diablo 4 video. It's actually my first Diablo 4 video, and I wasn't really planning on doing Diablo content, but then I'm Genshin Impact content creator or YouTuber. So basically, I'm doing this video because I have personally encountered some difficulties in trying to optimize the Paragon bots until I found like a more structured approach to do it. And I kind of want to share this structured approach because I feel that is something that actually helps. Yeah. So in terms of optimizing the Paragon bots, this is a very straightforward video. There are 5 steps involved. And I'll end with some final notes and what I'm going to do next. But since I started, might as well, right? Now, before we start, okay, this is a video on how to optimize Paragon bots. So I'm going to assume you have the basic knowledge on how the Paragon bots in Diablo 4 works. If you don't, please read through the link in the video description. I'll just name it Paragon Bot 101 because that's basically what it is. But it does have some good endgame information shared. There's just one more point I want to highlight. Okay, when you go to the default planner with the Paragon bots, I'll provide a link in the description as well, so you can mess around with that. Because I actually had enjoyed doing this while I'm waiting for Diablo 4 to release. It's kind of fun to do all this planning, yeah, or theory crafting, at least for me. Now, based on what you can see in the default planner, if you look only at the numerical values, right, of the node clusters as well as the nodes as well as the glyphs, it may look like going for more rare node clusters are better than the glyphs, but this can actually be leveled in the end game. So even if you don't read this description, I want to at least tell you guys this: glyphs can be leveled in the end game. So optimizing Paragon bots is definitely about getting as many glyphs as possible, while you still get the legendary nodes and the rare node clusters that's important for your build. Throughout this video, I'll be switching between the planner and this view so that I can demonstrate the best way to optimize the Paragon bots. Or rather, there will be a specific session where I'll go through the whole planet itself and do a demonstration. Now, for today's video, I'll be using a Whirlwind Berserker Barb with triple shouts and utilizing bleeding to get more damage for Whirlwind. Because you can see from the bots, right? The Paragon bots as well as some of the glyphs, right? You have to do bleeding to utilize some of these bonuses. It's actually very easy for Barb to get bleeding without having to use a bleeding skill. There are upgrades to skills like Whirlwind and Lunging Strike, etc. that has bleeding effect. There are legendary aspects that give you bleeding effect based on you dealing damage by Berserking. There is also the Arsenal system. The two-hand sword always gives you bleeding as well. Any direct damage you deal, it does bleeding on top of it as well. So there are a lot of ways to get bleeding, which is the reason why I believe that they have built it in such a way that the bots and glyphs also require bleeding, some cases anyway. I'll go deep dive on other classes eventually too. Let me just quickly show you guys the steps involved. Okay, so step 1, shortlist the glyphs for your build. And this is a very straightforward thing. I actually took a little bit of time just copy and pasting all the text out here. And we have a very clean, easy setup, right? Where by categorizing all the different glyphs, I can then, based on the build that I have, to know which are the runes that I want. And I've actually already done this. So basically, the yellow highlighted ones are the ones that I want. So 2 bleeding, 1 vulnerable, 1 berserking, 1 shouts because it's a triple shout build. And then you have the close, territorial, whirlwind, you're always close to enemies. Core skill, I mean whirlwind is a core skill. So so that brings us to the 7 glyphs that I want here. There can be more, obviously. Oh, there can be more glyphs for sure. But these are the 7 that I want. We can technically quiz out 8, but I'll show you guys it's very tough to get 8. It's doable, but you do have to sacrifice some stuff, which I don't really recommend. So these are the 7 glyphs that we want. Already shortlisted. Step 1 done. Let's move on to step 2. Now, step 2, we're gonna have to analyze the bots for matching the best glyph. And the best approach to do that is to look at this, the number of 5-stat nodes in the glyph radius. So these are all the different barbarian bots. Okay. You have the starter board, the Blood Rage, Bonebreaker, Carnage, Decimator, Flawless, Technique, Hemorrhage, Warbringer, Weapons Master, yada yada. But if you look at the highlighter figure, it basically shows you the highest number of uh the highest value for this particular stat. So for strength, right, you should put your strength requirement leaves to this. Starting Board, Blood Rage, Carnage, Hemorrhage. Likewise for dexterity. But for dexterity, because we're gonna have more dexterity in Glyphs, if you notice, dexterity has the highest number. It's 4. So there's probably gonna be some cases where you just use the 5. Yeah. Maybe even 3. But I'll talk about that later. And then we have the willpower. Okay. So like I mentioned, the highlighter cells simply represent the best bots to match the glyphs in terms of like just from numerical point of view. Like Carnage is the best for a glyph that scales with strength, like this over here, where it's every 5 strength purchase, you deal 1.5% increased damage for Berserking. So imagine if you have 11 strength nodes in Carnage and you put this particular glyph in there, you have the chance to get 11 of this. And this is level 1 of the glyph. And the glyph levels, you get a lot more. Okay. Now, step 3. Step 3 is about getting the best entry/exit paths for each bot. Because although the bot look the position of the nodes of the bot is basically fixed, but you can rotate the bot around. Okay, so I'm just going to show you guys a very simple view. We take into account the number of nodes or tiles to the glyph, which includes the glyph, before rotation. Because there's no way I can permutate and show you every single 4 directions, right? Or after rotating the bot once each. But essentially, what this table does here is to show you the number of tiles that you need, the shortest number of tiles that you need to quickly get a glyph and move on to the next spot. So for the Blood Rage board, okay, for Blood Rage board, if you look at this, right, it's very straightforward. You either enter Blood Rage board from the bottom and exit from the right, or you enter from the right and exit from the bottom. Again, before rotation, okay? And then you have all the other bots here. You have bots with like a bigger difference, 22 versus 10. You have one that has even 26 versus 10. Now the yellow cells represent like the best path per se, or acceptable path. And why do I call that acceptable path? While the red figures show the lowest, okay? But I call it acceptable because you notice that there's a -3 number that I put beside this 12th number for Carnage, for example. What this means is that this -3 simply means that there are some nodes, which is actually this portion here. There are some nodes that actually cover as part of the traveling to the glyph. So you actually get to save on those. Meaning that there are 3 nodes that are in the glyph radius that you actually have to go through in order to reach the glyph. So those are some savings that are being offered per se. Okay, it may not be a direct path, but even some of the direct paths gives you that saving because if the direct path has like for example 3 strength nodes and you are putting a 40 strength radius requirement socket into the glyph, you go through 3 strength node to hit it, and it helps. It already gives you 15 strength from that. That's what I mean here. Okay. Now the figures above are assuming you take the most direct path to the glyph, without considering your legendary nodes that typically require a detour from glyph. Some of them are okay, some of them are huge detours. They're very inefficient. Depending on your build, right? The detours may bring you to nodes that they're okay. You can get some of those nodes that's along the way, and then it makes more sense to go for the legendary node as well. But in my demonstration later, when I run through, I think it'll be clearer. Okay. Don't really want to go through too much here. The whole point of me going through this portion here that is a little bit more boring per se is really to show you guys the figures. So you know that this is like a very analytical, very structured approach. Yeah, but you feel free to pause and look at the best entry slash exit path as well as the 5-step radius nodes, etc. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next step. Yeah, I'm gonna try to move fast here because the demonstration through the planner is gonna take me some time. So now that we know how to optimize the best glyph for each board, we know the glyphs that we want for our builds, we know the best entry slash exit paths for each board. The next thing is really to set the order and actually the planning within the planner itself to have to simulate what we'll be actually doing in game. Oh, and also to see whether there's a need for rotation on any of the boards. Okay. So first consideration is obviously your glyph. Okay, the very first step you do is to think what's the very first glyph that you want. Because you have a starter board, you need to decide the glyph for that starter board before you choose your very first next Paragon board. So it's actually very straightforward. If you look at the seven shortlisted glyphs that I have here for a Whirlwind Berserker build with like 3 shouts, right? I think it should be fairly obvious that they should be the most important one to get first, right? Because 3 shouts, that's like half of our abilities. We only use 6 abilities. 3 of our abilities gets a benefit from this very first glyph over here. And it's also one that helps with the uptime because it reduces the cooldown. So pretty decent, but it does have a higher requirement. It requires 40 strength. So that's something we need to bear in mind. And let me just show you guys the very first board now. Oh crap. That is not meant to show. It was not meant to show to you guys. That was the final look. It's okay. I'll show you guys the final look later anyway. Alright, now let's see. Where possible, I try to get more willpower and dexterity first until we get the requirement for all our rare nodes fulfilled. Then we will try to switch them back to strength eventually. Okay. Now, we obviously gonna take the offensive path here. We don't need the additional 2% life here. And we're gonna go straight to our glyph socket. And we already said that we already shortlisted the first glyph. We decided our first glyph, which is Marshal, right? Click for Marshal here. And we know that we are going to want to get this offensive cluster here, right? But we don't want intelligence, we want strength. Remember? We want strength because we need we have a 40 strength requirement here. So we're gonna go ahead and get this. Why the two that why am I getting the 2 dexterity nodes as well? Because this glyph gives me 40% bonus to all the magic nodes we reach. So this has like more value than the usual dexterity per se. So we are doing this. Okay. Now there may be some cases eventually when you do need to squeeze out like 1 or 2 nodes, you may consider removing this. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, that will happen later. And you can only remove 1 because you can't break the link. Still need the intelligence node here. Carry out this too. Okay, so just bear that in mind. It's only saving you 1 node. Now strength, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we just need 1 more here, and we are done. We got our 40 strength requirement. We don't need more than 40 because there's no strength skilling here per se. So we then are done with the first board, and we can move on to the next board. Straightforward stuff, right? So let's move on to the next step. Now, next step obviously is the legendary node, right? Because we're going to choose our very first Paragon board. It's obviously going to be on the Paragon board itself, the legendary node on the Paragon board itself that defines the Paragon board, what we want. For my build, for my Whirlwind Berserker Bard build, I gotta say most of the legendary nodes for Bard's Paragon aren't that great. In fact, I can say that for every build. Yeah, the Paragon for build but bots for Barbarians aren't that great per se. At least the legendary nodes themselves. Other than say maybe Warbringer and Bloodrich for my build. Okay, for my build, specifically my build. Warbringer is because it's how should I put it? It's a bit more generic. It works with all the ability for the legendary node works with basically every build. But it's still not every build because of the nodes that you encounter along the way to Warbringer. I'll explain that more when we reach Warbringer in my demonstration. So between Warbringer and Bloodrage, Bloodrage has a much more efficient path to the legendary node. That's number one, because it goes through classes that we want. Number two is an offensive node, so I'm going for that. Okay, next will be the glyph that we want for the board. And the glyph that we want for the next board, which is Bloodrage, should be pretty straightforward. But it's actually, interestingly enough, right? When I go through a dimension, you'll see that we're actually going to go for a dexterity one. Because if you look at the glyphs, right? After choosing the shout, I suppose the next good one to get should be something like either this, maybe this, right? But you also have something like territory here, which gives you damage plus damage reduction. And I actually really like the damage reduction that we get here. It's going to help you with survival. It's going to help you with leveling. Because don't forget, when you're starting your Paragon board, you're only level 50 plus at this point. Or maybe hitting 60, whatever the case, you get like 4 nodes per level. So yeah, you're still at 50 plus here. So next board, we know that we're going for Blood Rage, right? Because Blood Rage gives me Berserking when I kill a bleeding enemy. And we are doing a Berserker build. So I want this, and we're going to get bleeding from all the different sources that I've talked about, without having to actually like full on go bleeding. So that's good. So now then this brings me to this board here, where we know that wait, sorry, I skipped one step. One very important step, which is that Blood Rage is also very efficient for the starter board because it has a very, very low. The best path starts from the bottom, the bottom entry or exit, and starting path will always go upwards. So basically, any of these boards will do. In fact, because you can rotate them, every board can work. But I want to try to optimize it in this structured approach where I don't need to always rotate the board. I only rotate when it's required. So by default, we always try to use like the default position per se. At least default based on what we have in the planner. Okay. And so Blood Rage fits this perfectly. And now that we know that Blood Rage has the shortest exit path on the right, we go from the bottom, we know that we are going this way. Yeah. But where's the legendary node? It's over here. Okay. So that's the detour that I talked about. But before I go further, let me just quickly populate this cluster here. So I talk about wanting to do dexterity. Why? Why do I want to choose a dexterity node? Because my other strength node is best on Carnage, right? Because Carnage has 11, remember? Carnage has 11, so I want to use this particular glyph on Carnage. That leaves me with all the other dexterity, as well as 1 willpower. But for this willpower, it increases bleeding damage, which is like the lowest priority for me, this build. What I really want is the additional bonus here, but it'll probably reach late game. I'll need to reach late game with all the desired legendary aspects before this can truly help us to achieve enough cooldown reduction such that we can get the shots on a almost close to 100% uptime. Hopefully, it's a bit too copium. It requires a lot of enemies to achieve. But you get what I'm trying to say, right? Like this is more of an end game thingy, and it's not like 100% synergized. So we don't need to worry about willpower. So we only need to look at dexterity. Okay? And that brings me to this fall. Yeah? It's very, very straightforward. And like I said, since most of them provide more or less the same damage, in fact, this actually gives you the best damage, although it has a distance limit. But you're going to be using Whirlwind. So you're going to be up there in the melee range. It's fine. And you get damage reduction as well. So I personally think that I want to go for this. You can also go for this if you have enough crit rate. But again, remember, you are at level 50 plus at this point in time. You're not going to have enough crit rate chance unless you are so lucky that you found that the aspect that increases your whirlwind crit chance. But I'll rather save that for my endgame weapon, to be honest. because you're going to keep changing your weapon most of the time. While leveling, you should never ever imprint your weapon. Need to, because the weapon is going to be the one that you'll always be changing. This is something true in every single Diablo game, to be honest. Okay? So I personally will go for Territorial here for the damage reduction as well. And check this out. While going to the Glyph, we already have gotten us 2 dexterity. Beside this Glyph socket, there's another dexterity. That's the 3 dexterity that we have. If you notice, we're actually going for the worst option here. But there's a special reason why, because you still have dexterity from this, right? So we get our damage, we get our dexterity here, and voila, we have enough for our radius. Because we have 15 plus 14, 29. Done. We're done. So we just need to move this way. We can exit this board. But that's the legendary node, right? So then, this means... Wait, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Now, I want to go here. So there's 2 paths to a legendary node. We either go this way or this way, right? But if I go this way, it means that I'm closer to this node cluster, rare node cluster, which honestly isn't that great. Not that I'm going to get it right now, but when you eventually run through all the glyphs, you get all your glyphs, right? You will have some extra points left, and those are the ones where you start wanting to add to other node classes that you might want. And look at this. This is 7.5% Berserking duration increase. It's actually very good for my Berserker build, right? Because I'm trying to do like a Berserker with as much uptime on your Berserker and shouts. So I get to be closer to this if I go via here. I mean, technically speaking, if you go via here, you will also be closer to this, right? It's fine. You're going to be closer than this as well. But we are also going right here. So it may make sense for us to do this. We're going to go right, right? This is going to be our exit path, right? Then it makes more sense for me to go here so that I also get this yellow node, this rare node, get the damage reduction. Huh? Nobody cares about the willpower here. We get the damage reduction. And then we can go this path here. So it conveniently gives us the legendary node, gives us an additional rare node, and nodes that are actually really good for our build, which I'm actually going to go get them right now. Yeah. So this is actually very efficient because we have the shortest entry exit path. We managed to get both rare node clusters as part of our desired pathing. We get our legendary node, and we also get something that's really good for our build. Very nice, very efficient. So now we are going right here, right? What's the next board that we want? Go back to this. What's the next board that we want? It's going to be a board where it has a specific rare node cluster that we want. So now, you can actually go for Carnage. Why Carnage? Because Carnage has this 7.5 plus 7.5 per second duration. Across all the Paragon boards available for Barbarian, these are the only 2 boards that have this. We're gonna go for Carnage. This is Carnage. Oh, but when you add Carnage, you look at it, we're kind of far from the Glyph socket, and we're also far from the 7.5% duration increase. This is where rotation comes in, right? The beauty of rotation, because if you look at Carnage, if you enter from the left, this is the worst possible path for Carnage. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We are entering Carnage from the left because Blood Rage has the best exit point from the right. So the right of Blood Rage goes into the left of Carnage. Now we have to rotate for sure. Okay. Where is our 7.5%? Here. Now technically speaking, we can go here. But it makes it awkward for us then to exit, right? So we rotate again. All of a sudden, This looks like a very clean approach, right? Because go here, we get our glyph circuits, hook up, and along the way we can get this, the 7.5% berserking duration. Now, why do I want to go up and not say bottom? It's simple. I mean, right is fine as well. Both are right is fine. Bottom is not a good option because bottom already has a starting board here, which means that when you go this direction, you leave yourself with only the right and bottom to expand further. As opposed to say, if I go top or right, I still have another 3 more directions to go. Okay, so some basic planning here. Okay, now in terms of this glyph socket, we already know what we want, right? We want the one that scales with strength. Talk about it a few times already. It's 11 strength nodes here. So we're gonna want to enter from the path that has a strength node. You should notice that actually both of them have it. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna go up because this is up, right? So we're gonna do here. We'll go this direction, right? And then we go to the glyph socket. And we're gonna choose the strength socket that we want. Sorry, glyph that we want. Now, if I look at this setup, it does look like going here is better, right? Because I have 2 strength here. Being able, this strength here is here. Right beside the socket, I'll get it no matter what. So it's going to be more efficient. We go via the other direction, even though the top looks like it's better because of this. Okay. So a lot of times, sometimes you have to take a closer look. Make sure you take the most ideal path into the glyph socket. Now we already selected this, right? So now all we need to do is make sure that we have enough strength. We have this here. We're going up, so this is definitely, we're going to take this. The 3 strength here. Let's get this. Huh? It gives us 8 strength. Sorry, that gives us 6 strength. We have another 2 here. So we got our 8 strength already. We have our radius requirement done. Get our berserking. While berserking, you can take 10% reduced damage from elites. And for future sake, when this glyph gets leveled high enough that it's worthwhile to go get the remaining 3 strength nodes that is in here. We go this path so that it's nearest to this, so we get to easily get it again. Future, when this glyph is high level enough such that it's worthwhile getting the additional strength nodes. Okay, so this is like very optimized planning. You choose the board, the highest number of strength nodes for this glyph that scales with strength. To plan the path for future, you only get the minimum required and you plan the path for future, maximize out the strength nodes when this glyph is that high level enough. Yeah, you can immediately add this. And I guess we have to waste 1 willpower to get this. And the next strength node is over here, which is right beside the glyph socket as well. Yeah. So total you spend 4 to get 3 more instances of the bonus. Not too shabby. If the glyph is high level enough and skills good enough. And so now I don't need I can't find any information on how this skills. So yeah, I can't really do the planning for this. But we can at least plan the path for future. And as I go here, it's also for us to get this, the 7.5% berserking duration that I talk about. Right? And now I am very, very close to the next exit point. It's going to be our top. So you'll see here we have rotated the carnage. And again, we have optimized our path. We make it an efficient path. We got our strength nodes. We have our future ready for additional strength nodes. We got our rare cluster that we want, or also these 2 magic nodes that we want. Okay. But the rare cluster we want as well because the rare cluster has the berserker duration increase as well. So what this means is that from my first 2 added Paragon boards, I am actually able to get 42% increased berserker duration, which helps a lot with our berserking uptime. That's very nice. Yeah. So going back to the spreadsheet, right? Yep. It shows you guys this, right? Now, before I go on to step 5, right? Step 5 is actually going to be just the completion part. So let me just run through the planner one last time. One more board, okay? Or maybe a couple of empty boards. The next step to decide the next board is either going to be, we repeat the process again, right? We look at Glyph, we look at legendary node, or rather we look at legendary node first, and then whether there's a specific rare node cluster. So obviously, I definitely highly recommend you go into set a planner. You link up all the boards that you can, because you don't need to link up the nodes to add on the boards. Just add on the boards and look at each of the board whether there's some nodes that you want. If there's not, then I guess for me, right, I probably want to add Warbringer next, because Warbringer has a low best entry exit path when you go from the bottom. Okay? Has a best exit path when you go to the bottom. Go from the bottom, which is here, because the top of Carnage is the bottom of the next new board. And more importantly, I want to show you guys the Warbringer here, where you have a legendary node that's semi-decent. The path is actually very straightforward. You go from bottom to right to left, right? No choice, right? For optimization sake. And there's no way I can rotate this, right? I guess we can rotate it to the right. I'm not sure whether it does that. No, it always rotates in this direction. Oh, but we can do this. We can do this. 1, 2. But there's actually some value in going to a 2-direction limit scenario, because there are some boards that actually have left-right good paths, like Decimator and Flawless Technique. And if you think about it, if you go through left and right, if the board is set up perfectly, right, you actually get to go through the 2 rare nodes as well. 2 rare node cluster. You're having to, oh, sorry. I actually forgot to get this. My bad. Yeah, we should get this, right? Damage while berserking. This damage while berserking. Yeah, so we need to get the. Now, some cases you manage to get 2, some you manage to get only 1. But when you go left to right, you will be able to get more. And let me show you this. See, as I go through this, naturally we'll be able to get 2, right? There's no way I don't get the flat red node here. Okay? Okay, now let me talk about Warbringer here, right? The thing about Warbringer is that if you look at compare it versus Blood Rage, at least for the Whirlwind Berserker build, right? I mean, the legendary node here is so good. I managed to go through one more of my rare node cluster within the Glyph radius. We get nearer to our important magic and rare node cluster as well. But when it comes to Warbringer, your 2 paths here from the Glyph is about getting Fury. Again, getting Fury. And here is Resistance. And here, it's not so bad. It's additional damage when you have Fortified. But that's it. In fact, I think Warbringer is a good board for, say, something like a Hammer of the Ancients build, where the animation and maximum Fury helps, because Hammer of the Ancient gives you addition. That's the upgrade that gives you additional damage based on each point of Fury that you have when you cast it. So I see this board being like an important board for Hammer of the Ancients, not for Warring build. But we're gonna go this way. Then we're gonna go this way. Yeah. Now the only thing about the Flawless Technique is that it kind of limits you to one-hand weapon. But it's actually okay, because for Whirlwind, I don't think I actually think that dual wielding for Whirlwind should be good, because it helps with your lucky hit. Okay, and lucky is actually very important for some of the mechanics in the game, because of the way it's designed, right? You actually get very low lucky hit chances. So the more hits there are, and the faster and the more number of hits that you have, right, is very important. Okay, so I don't want to go populate all the points, otherwise this video will just become too long. So I'm going to just show you guys the final build, which I accidentally showed for a while here. But this is how it looks like. See, we managed to go get ourselves 7 glyphs activated, including we added 6 bots. And if you remember, we we start here, right? And talk about going from the bottom here all the way to the left for Warbringer. Go through Flawless Technique, which then gives us 2 of the rare nodes within the radius. Which is good. And then we reach Weapons Master. Now, Weapon Master here is it actually has been rotated. You remember Weapons Master is top and left for the best entry exit path. But it's bottom and right here. Obviously, I've rotated. But for the most part, most of my boards are not rotated. Okay, most of my boards are not rotated. It's only Weapons Master and Carnage, which makes things simple in terms of planning. Okay, so Weapons Master is also very, very efficient. Look at this. It's very, very efficient. You actually get all the stats that you need straight path. For Blood Feeder over here. And we have Exploit over here, right? Exploit. And then you go straight down to the next, the final board, which conveniently also has many willpower slots for our last glyph that requires willpower, which is the Disembowel, which we are really using for the additional bonus more than the. I mean, the bonus still helps. We are still dealing damage, but it's not our main source of damage. And this Decimator is actually a good board to end on, because the rest of the paths don't feel as great. Yeah, you see you have a lot of the rare nodes that are all over this side. Right? But we are entering from the other direction. Now obviously you can rotate the board, but once you rotate the board, you get too far from the glyph socket. So this board is actually a good board to stop if you are just getting the glyph. And in fact, when I finished the entire path to activate all as many glyphs as possible, while still getting our 2 magic nodes and 2 rare cluster that we want, as well as one legendary node, right? We actually still have 6 nodes left. Sure, it says 6 nodes left. And those 6 nodes also conveniently convert to 1 more rare node, along with 2 magic nodes that give us damage as well. That's very nice. And on top of that, this rare node, I'm able to get a bonus as well, because I already have 353 this dexterity. It's like 20% damage to bleeding enemies plus 5, that's 25. And 6.4 plus 8.5 to 8, almost damage. Pretty good. Hey, I'm gonna really like a very high level on this glyph in order to justify dropping this, right? Get the additional strength nodes. But maybe it skills that well. We'll see eventually. But you know, this now gives you a very, very efficient board, because we have done a very, very structured approach. This higher planning that gives us the most efficient path through every single board while getting the most value out of them. 1. But 2, also getting the nodes that and cluster that we want, and also the legendary node. Yeah, good stuff. So I'm very, very happy with this planning that I have done. I think it's very good and very efficient, and yeah. But obviously we still need to test it out in game. Like that brings me to my last step, which I basically run through, right? Completing the glyphs and utilizing the SS nodes. Now, one other thing I didn't mention is that, you know, we have 7 glyphs, right? If I drop this node cluster, this legendary node, and maybe even this, right? We may be able to skip one more glyph, but it's no longer required. Like, I think having this is still more important, you know? This are still so good. Sorry, not this. This and this are so good for our build. You have to remember what are the important rare node cluster for you. And it's actually good. You don't need a second and one more glyph. I got my 7 glyphs that I shortlisted. If I really want to force out one more glyph, it will be a weapon specific glyph, which isn't that great, because you may not necessarily always get like that specific weapon type that you want, or especially for a one-hand weapon, right? Like let's say if you want 2 one-hand swords, you don't end up getting 2 of the good one-hand swords. You get one mace and one axe. They're kind of in good spot. So I actually like how this works out now, how this pans out now. And I gotta say that I feel that the increased berserking duration is actually very, very valuable. Because it's a 42% increased duration. So that basically means that a 5-second berserking 7.1, 4-second berserking to 5.7. Now I know that there's a cap for at 5 seconds for berserking right now, which is why if you take unconstrained, this gets maximum value. You get the potential to get 100% uptime, especially with the legendary aspect that extends berserk duration. Because it is based on lucky hit, right? The longer your berserk duration, the higher chance for you to extend, right? The shorter your berserker duration, the harder it is. So yeah, this has great synergy. And I actually think that unconstrained as one of the key passive, right? I believe it has the potential to match Unbridled Reach, especially if you're going for like Fury Generator less build and 100% uptime. Because if you don't have a Fury Generator, then it may be harder to sustain your Unbridled Reach, right? Unbridled Reach, right? And unconstrained becomes better. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes because the way rare for the Berserker works is that if you use a basic skill, it also helps extend the Berserker, gives you another Berserking for 5 seconds, which is 7.1 seconds with our 42% increase. So yeah, maybe there may be still be value getting Fury Generator. Let's see how it goes in the final endgame. Rather when the game goes live and everyone plays it like endgame. This last point I'm not gonna go further. We already talked about it already in the future for the strength scaling. So that brings me to the final notes. Now, seeing as this is pre-release, right? Obviously, we may have to do some tweaks when the game actually goes live. But I'm actually pretty happy with how the Paragon Board turned out. And before I use I gotta share with you guys, right? Before I use this structured approach that I shared with you guys, I was actually just trying doing like clicking through the planner, right? I find that it's very, very subject to try and error. That's number one. It's a high risk of it not being optimized as well. Can you imagine if you didn't optimize it for like each block, maybe you lose out on 5 nodes. 5 across 6 boards, that's 30 nodes. It's a huge difference. 30 nodes is already if it's sufficient for you to traverse to a new board, that's number one. It's also sufficient for you to maybe get 2 rare clusters. It's also sufficient for you to get another legendary node. So this optimization actually is very, very important for Paragon boards. So I hope that this video helps you guys out in terms of optimizing your Paragon boards planning from now on. And since we have about 10, 12, 11 days, 10 to 12 days for early access anyway, to until early access Diablo 4 is out, there's a lot of time to do the planning for your Paragon board and enjoy the default planner. I actually find it fun, but that's coming from me, actually impaired theory crafter. So yeah. Anyway, next Diablo 4 guide, I'm probably going to go for Necro next, or maybe more Barb builds. So alternatively, you can also let me know what are the comments which class you prefer. Okay. Oh, and just a quick note for my Genshin Impact viewers, no worries. I'll still be playing Genshin and doing Genshin videos too. Next will probably be Kirara's release, yeah. Alright. So thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, remember like video and click subscribe for more. Bye.